you're still fighting the war.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shoulder to Shoulder, where we tell stories to bridge the civ-mil gap while also talking about issues that are important to active duty service members, veterans, and their families. I am Will Selber, the owner of Grumpy Combat Veteran, and I am delighted and honored, actually, to have our guests today. Joining us today is Teri and Patrick Caserta. They are the proud parents of aviation electrician's mate, third class Brandon Caserta, who on June 25th of 2018 took his own life after enduring what can only be described as a very toxic environment. And they're going to tell the story of their son, share his life with us, and then tell the story of how they took that tragedy and they were able to somehow get the Brandon Act passed. And then we're going to talk about what the Brandon Act is, and then maybe a couple of things that maybe the DOD should be doing better to make sure that the Brandon Act is fully implemented. And for those that don't know, we'll put it in the show link. The Brandon Act, to summarize it before they jump in, basically allowed service members to get mental health treatment without notifying their command. And that is a big deal as a former commander. That is a thing that to be honest with you, I never thought, I never wanted to know. But here we go. So Teri and Patrick, welcome to Shoulder. We're so honored to have you here. Of course. Well, we'll just go ahead and just get started. Maybe you can tell us what made your son want to join the Navy, or what type of young man he was.
Well, he was very outgoing. He was in karate and swimming since he was 4 years old, and he stuck with that till literally the day he died. But he did a police internship in high school, and he really wanted to be a police officer, but he had to wait till he was 21. So he wanted to do something until then, and it was between, for him, college and joining the military, and he wanted to try and be a Navy SEAL. So the only way to do that is to join the military. He figured with the SEAL training behind him, if he wanted to go SWAT, it would open the door. So that was his plan. It was a good plan. I mean, he'd been in karate and swimming his whole life. He played sports year round his whole life.
Football.
Yeah, football. He loved football.
Mm-hmm.
He started with flag for many years until he could get the tackle, and after that, and then he did swimming. So he very active, very outgoing, like people.
Was very well liked.
Yeah.
And always smiling and
always helping others.
That's a common trait for a lot of, in my experience, is a lot of people that join the military are there because they want to help people. And it's, they want that life of purpose. And that's really one of the many attractions we're supposed to be for enlisting in the military. Sir, you were in the Navy, is that right, sir?
Yes.
And how long were you in the Navy for, sir?
22 years.
22 years. Wow. Somebody did 20, thank you for your service. That is a long career. I'm still tired. So, I'm sure that, your service, was a role model for your son. And, could you explain maybe, his career in the Navy and what led to this tragedy?
Well, he was doing really well. He was in SEALs and he was doing well. There was some issues over there. The SEALs, there's articles on this. He had told us about it early on. To be honest, I found it somewhat unbelievable, but I knew he was telling the truth. It just didn't seem conceivable. What I mean is the unit he was in, PEDs were big, and he wouldn't do PEDs. So you had the people that did them, the people that didn't do them. So it was kind of like a line divided. and they used to steal from him his uniforms and things of that nature, make it harder for him. But it didn't bother him. He was that way. He still liked everybody, did things for people, and he just was refused to do the PEDs. I mean, he wouldn't even drink an energy drink. Um, and that is the rules there, by the way. They pound that in your head. You have an energy drink, you're out of here. I mean, wink, wink. But um, what was fascinating about the story was that I had urinalysis more times than I ever wanted to contribute to the program. Every time I turned around, it seemed like I was peeing in a bottle. It just seemed inconceivable that the SEALs weren't doing the same thing. But apparently they weren't. And articles have come out on that, and he was telling the truth, even though we knew that. But in SEAL training, what had happened with Brandon, he was doing really well. He had some problems with obstacle course, and he overcame that. And he um his leg was hurting. I told him to go to the emergency room. He wouldn't listen to me. They brainwashed that you can't go to medical unless you get their permission, and their permission means they determine if you even merits medical. And so he went a couple of times, and they refused to do an X-ray. They said it was severe shin splints. He told them, "No, I've had those many times. I know how to get through that." They told him, "Well, that's what it is. Get out of here." So he went 2 or 3 times, and they wouldn't do anything. So what ended up happening is one early morning, they were doing the boats overhead when they used to do that. They don't anymore. And he collapsed and passed out on the beach. They literally threw him in the back of a pickup truck, took him to the bell, and he refused to ring the bell. He said, "I need medical attention." And they, so they rang it for him, which is illegal. They hit that point home to you, you'd wonder why the instructors would do something illegal. There's 2 reasons. Number one is you had to have figured out by now where the PEDs were coming from. Brandon had told us long. This is old information. There's been recent articles on this. And second is the 2 hours after Brandon, that happened to Brandon, and they left him there. They didn't bring him to medical. They left him there. But these same guys, 2 hours after that, they literally killed the kid in the pool. It was ruled a homicide too. Drowned him. It was that's a fact. So just to set the tone there, Brandon had this, I joke around, but I had the same story. It's like a Forrest Gump story. You ran it. He touched on so many different things so quickly. It was sad and good and bad. So anyway, they left him there, but they discharged him. He went to medical. The doctor told him, "You have severe shin splints. However, for the heck of it, I'm going to do an X-ray. If I find anything, I'll call you, but don't expect a call from me." So 15 minutes later, the doctor called him to get back here. Your leg's broken in 3 different places. A kid was literally doing the SEAL training, running 20 miles or more a day, and all that vigorous training for well over 2 weeks with a broken leg, literally. And what had happened is, and I know people are thinking this, I will point this out to you. I was in Arizona. We went out there immediately to San Diego. We drove out there. I told Brandon, word for word, I said, "I can get you back in the SEALs at the click of my fingers." He said, "Dad, there's no doubt in my mind you can get me back in." But he said, "They'll never let me get through. They'll never let me get through." He would know. So I backed away. When you don't make it through SEALs, like it or not, what I'm about to say is 100% true. You're at the mercy of the Navy. So he, there were some jobs he was offered, nothing to brag about, and it's usually used to be that way. We actually got that changed, just so you know. We could talk about that too.
Sure.
He picked the best of the bunch. He went to Pensacola with a broken leg on crutches, and he was at aviation electrician school. He did really well. Then he, and oh, by the way, with the SEAL stuff, so he had a broken leg, he had sight, ammonia, bad ammonia too. These are common things. Most of them end up with it over there. It's part of the water in the bay is not the greatest over there, unfortunately. And So he was sick on top of that is my point. And but he moved on, went to the command, and immediately from checking into that command, they were, and he went to advanced C school. So he graduated from A school, he went to C schools, and they were not very nice to him to begin with. They were calling him a buds dud and other things. But he had this loser LPO that picked on him all the time, and this LPO, all he cared about was making chief, and he wasn't cheap material, but he thought he was. And he constantly picked on Brandon. And what was funny about that is Brandon was the hardest, best worker in the command. I'm not making that up. That is a fact. He worked. Brandon had this knack for things. That's why they were stealing his uniforms and seals. He can make anything good. I mean, he was an expert at it. He could make shoes so shiny you could see yourself in them
by using a blowtorch.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was good. And when it came to work, he would work, do his job. He'd go up to the LPO. LPO said, go help everybody else. He'd go do that. And then he'd go up to him again, and the guy would say to him, hey, go make yourself useful somewhere else. That's the kind of person that LPO was, but that's the kind of worker Brandon was. And he could wash a helo and do it perfectly, quickly, and find a way to do it faster than anyone else. He just was that way. And this all stems from, he loved Legos when he was young. I liked them too. And we'd build together. He blew me away building after a while, and he could just make it better, faster, and anything he did, anything he built, he could do it perfectly. He was a jack of all trades, truly. And he excelled at it. And he, that's how the obstacle course problem he had. He found a way to overcome his problems. Like I said, he figured out ways to make his time better and the right way. But he could cut corners faster, and he figure out degrees. I mean, it was like hilarious, but he did it. So anyway, this command, he was picked on. So what he did is he did not like aviation electrician at all. But on top of that, they had him selling candy in the command, and he was on the flight line sometimes, and that's it. And he was a rated electrician, and he should have never been in those two places. And I don't care what anybody says in the aviation community. I don't want to hear it. No offense to you. You accept the fact that you're on the flight line and selling candy. That is totally wrong, illegal. It's wage fraud and abuse at its best. The government paid $300 to $400 to send him to school. They don't send you to school to be on a flight line and to sell candy. But more importantly, the candy part. The flight line, yeah, whatever. I know everybody does it. I've heard the story.
For nearly 2 years, he was selling candy.
And Brandon, just so you know, that jack of all trades I told you about, Brandon was the best at selling candy. Yeah. He'd go to people, find out what they like. He'd have whatever they liked there. It was like hilarious. They loved him. Literally loved him selling candy. He made the most money by far. It made them more money than they can fathom when he sold candy. That's him. He does the best he can at whatever he's doing, and he was good at that.
And then he also, when somebody he knew was, down, he would put their favorite candy bar in their locker so that when they go back to their locker, it was a surprise for them.
And so he was doing this, and he decided, what happened is that LPO got deployed, and Brandon decided he wanted to go air crewman. So he had to get a class 2 swimmer certification, I believe. And 30 people tried out that day, and he was the only one that passed. And so he was selected immediately for air crewman. The hardest one, I forget the name of it, but there's 6 of them. It was the hardest one. It's hunting down submarines, but it was the hardest one to qualify for, and he qualified. So he had got orders immediately and was leaving. And what happened is his hammer grip slipped off his bike, literally right in front of the command. He fell to the ground, broke his collarbone. His NC, so Navy counselor to command, took it upon himself to cancel Brandon's orders, that's not how this works. I pointed out to you, Brandon went to Pensacola on crutches, okay? If he would have gone to Pensacola with a broken collarbone, which would have been healed by the time he left, he he could have gone. In other words, there are ways. But the story that the counselor told him was that I talked to the community manager. The manager said to cancel your orders and that when you're found fit for duty, he will get you out of there within a week. So Brandon believed that, and it was believable. I was a Navy counselor. It was believable. I didn't like the fact the orders were canceled, but the point is, it was a believable story. There was no reason for me not to believe it. And unfortunately, I knew and met this counselor through Brandon, and he seemed on the up and up. It wasn't very kind of whatever. Brandon was still working, selling candy while he had a broken collarbone. He got healed. He was found fit for duty March 28, 2018. He was supposed to leave in February 2018. That was his original orders. So he says, hey, I'm found fit for duty. He runs to the counselor. The counselor says, he goes, get me out of here, and the guy goes, call the community manager, get me out of here. The guy goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I never told you that. He's lying through his teeth. What had happened is that LPO got fired on deployment for toxic abuse of leadership and abuse of power. And to give you some and he was ordered to go to anger management, ordered to go. And one of the things he was doing on that cruise, he was picking on somebody else, and he was taking bets on when that kid would take his life. That's the kind of person we're talking about here. So he gets fired, comes back to command. They put him in his old position. Unfortunately, he's in charge of Brandon again. He finds out Brandon's was going air crewman, and he was livid. Like Brandon had to go through him or something and ask his permission. And so what the counselor did is he made Brandon redo his entire package and reapply for the program, which I was livid, but I'm like, you know what? Just do what he wants. Just do it. So Brandon did, and he got everything done, and he was ready to go again, and that LPO was furious, and he was going to do that LPO was doing anything he could to sabotage Brandon. And so in the end, he did all kinds of stuff, and ultimately that led to Brandon taking his life. Brandon felt the command wouldn't support him anymore for air crewman. I told him that's untrue, and I told him we'd fix everything, but I guess I lost when it comes to this guy. This guy was way more worse than Brandon even described to us. And so what happened is Brandon went out to the flight line, or no, I called the command. I was on the phone with the command master chief, and this guy's going round and round with me about stuff that not only was not even true, but didn't matter to anything. And the guy just wouldn't stop. He said he had to go. He called me back. He gets off the phone with me. Apparently, I didn't know what I'm about to tell you. I'm just putting it into perspective. While we were off the phone, he went to Brandon and screamed at him, told him, your career's over. I'm going to ruin your life, all this stuff.
And we have witnesses that witnessed it.
And so he calls me back. I'm on the phone with him. In that conversation, he's still on this round and round with me stuff. And someone interrupted and said something. He said, repeat that. I couldn't hear what they said. I have no idea what was said. Well, I actually do. I'll tell you.
Do you now?
I do now. He told me he had to go. He got off the phone. Next thing I know, two casualty assistant officers are at our front door. 4 hours later, we lost touch. 6 hours later, we lost touch with Brandon. And
you called the command a couple of times.
Right, I called, and they told me he wasn't there. Nice people, just so you know. The watch told me it's quieted down there, and unbelievable that they would lie to me like that. And so it still was not out of line in that time frame. Brandon sometimes got back at his room at 9 at night, and we're 3 hours ahead. So there was nothing out of ordinary. So it's a complete shock when casualty control pulls up. Unfortunately, back then we had cameras, we still do. But the point is, having cameras is a good and a bad thing. I'm here to tell you, your government car pulls up to your house and two uniformed people get out of it. Trust me, it ain't good news. So we knew immediately. Didn't understand, but we knew. So he wanted to tell us what happened as Brandon went he went down the flight line, and He said to the plane captain, sorry for what you're about to see. He ran for the tail rotor. He missed. He jumped up and missed. They all watched him. And then a second time he succeeded in taking his life. They all ran away. Every one of them ran away. And I point this out to you because they were all various ranks, various levels of experience. And I can't believe they ran away, but they left him on the tarmac like that. And then it turns out they left him on the tarmac for 6 hours and actually forgot about him. He went from the tarmac to the morgue. He never went to the hospital. Now, this next part, real quick tidbit, you need to know, because I know I've said a lot of things about the command, and there are those of you skeptical. Like I said, this is proven fact. Brandon was the hardest, best worker in the command. When I say that, that means he was not a dirtbag. So get that out of your head. Second, he qualified for air crewman, the hardest thing. He had moved on from SEALs. He could have gone back to SEALs at the click of his fingers. He chose to go air crewman. So he's making the best out of the enlistment that he was on. But anyway, if you have any doubts about this command, this will bring it together. What Teri will tell you right here.
I will. So the next day, after we were told by the casualty assistant officers, that Brandon died and how he died, they came back because there's a ton of paperwork you need to do. And we were just, obviously not in the state of mind to do this paperwork. When they came back, they told us how they were notified that they needed to come to our house. Whether it was an email or a phone call, I'm not 100% sure, but what they were told was that they needed to come to our house and tell us that Brandon was alive and in the hospital. That is what they were on their way to tell us. On the way to our house, they saw a news clip or somebody sent it to them that there was a mishap at Norfolk Naval Base and the sailor was deceased. They pulled over and called the command and asked them if that was Brandon. They kept telling them that you need to just tell the parents that Brandon is alive and in the hospital. We were told that went on for nearly 10 to 15 minutes, the back and forth. Finally, the commander told them it was indeed Brandon, but that they needed to tell us that Brandon was alive and in the hospital. The casualty assistant officer says we cannot and will not lie to the parents. They have a right to know if their child is actually deceased. So they did tell us the truth.
And they happen to be two E7s, and they obviously weren't in that chain of command. And so that's what got us the truth. You're wondering, why would they lie? Well, turns out the shredders were going. They were stealing stuff. They were fabricating stuff. There's all that Commander Dwayne Whitmer cared about is his career. He chose to, he was toxic already, so he chose to cover everything up. He could have gone after who was responsible for this and done something, but he didn't. And then when he found out I was retired military, he knew he was in trouble. He knew I was going to go after him. And I spoke to him on the phone that night. He made all kinds of promises to me. He did none of it. And the worst part was the investigation.
Yeah.
He didn't do, and he promised to hold people accountable, and he did none of it. And he couldn't hold anybody accountable because they blackmailed him. They had the goods on him too. So by not taking responsibility and doing the right thing, he caused this mess. But the other thing he did is they held a memorial service without our permission, and they didn't invite us. And then they upped security. We read this in a FOIA, so you know this. They upped security in case we showed up ourselves. And then they blocked Brandon's friends who were in other commands from going to the memorial service because they didn't want to take a chance of them talking to people in the command and them telling them the truth. They didn't want to take any chances. So that's what happened. Also, I got to throw this tidbit in. So after Brandon died, I called the community manager myself, their crewman community manager, and I asked the guy, why in the world did you cancel his orders? And he's like, he says to me word for word, I didn't cancel his orders because I needed this guy. He goes, this is the hardest one to qualify for. I got nobody for this. He said, I was waiting for him to be found fit for duty. And he goes, I haven't talked to that command since he was accepted in the program. He says, nobody has ever called me from that command. Word for word said that. So Remy Spence, the counselor, lied. The reason he lied is he was in cahoots with a maintenance master chief and Jared Bros, the LPO, that didn't want Brandon to go. And they didn't want to lose Brandon for what they felt was a good reason, hardest, best worker in the command. They couldn't have, enticed him to stay somehow. I mean, they had to send him away in a pine box, of course. Anyway, that command is by far the most toxic, abusive command I've ever ran into. You wouldn't believe the lies. We don't have time for this. I'm just pointing out all the lies they did, the way they treated us. I've been disrespected by the best of them, I got to tell you.
Me too.
This topped it, and I never forget this. The way all of them act, how that command no one tell the truth. The other thing he did, point out, we always forget this. It's important you listen to this. They mustered the entire command and put out a mutiny order. Here's what they said. They said two things. We had put out a $100,000 reward for information leading to the prosecution of the people that killed Brandon. They said, if you have any aspiration of collecting that money, you won't, because if any of you talk, we will consider a mutiny and you will go to Leavenworth. They told the commanders 4 different times they did this. And 2 of the times were after our articles. They took a year to get out, but after the articles came out, they threatened mutiny after they came out. Ironically, after the second article came out, which they both came out in the same week, Dwayne Whitmer disappeared. That was the commander. He was the XO for 18 months. He's supposed to do 18 months CO. He'd only been less than a year the CO. He disappeared. His boss, the Commodore, disappeared. He retired. And again, I'm just pointing out, they were responsible for the death. Obviously, Big Navy fell too. Whether they were scapegoats or not, it doesn't matter. They mishandled the whole situation. And reading about what they read, they knew it was all true because it was backed by NCIS. Even though NCIS didn't do a criminal investigation, they were doing an investigation of the death. And all these things I'm telling you came out in there. Also, Jared Bros, command put in their investigation, which was the cheesiest thing you've ever seen, that Bros went to anger management. He's a rehabilitated guy. That's why they put him back in charge. NCIS checked it out. It turned out Bros never went to anger management. The command lied. If that guy would have gone to anger management, there's a chance Brandon would be alive today. Think about it. And he was ordered to go by this CO to anger management. It's not like it was anybody else, and he didn't go. So,
And
I've never heard of such a more toxic command in my life. I don't think it's even close.
Yes, and
NCIS found Jared Burroughs guilty of UCMJ 93, which is cruelty and maltreatment, and nothing was done to him.
And that's because he blackmailed the command, and he had the goods on them because they were all involved in the cover-up. They were all involved in along the way too. It's not like that guy, they weren't told that he was a problem and that there was issues going on. They knew. And to give you an example, a week before Brandon died, the standard procedure for that command was the anonymous box. If you put something in there, you also slid the same thing under the CO's door because the CMC never turned the stuff into the CO. Anything bad was good, it'd go to him. And so the CO had it. And how do we know this? It was on the only thing that survived Brandon's phone, because nobody paid attention to this, is a dated timestamp, the letter's there, and it shows the serial number of the printer he printed it off of, which was in the command.
And the computer.
And the computer. And that proved the CO had it. So a week before Brandon died, the CO had
a letter that Brandon typed up to him explaining everything that was wrong with the command and how he should fix it.
And it was anonymous, but after Brandon died, they obviously knew who the letter belonged to. And But the way that command handled it, like I said, is bad on me. He was dead. One other thing I want to point out. So nobody came to his actual funeral here in Phoenix.
From the command.
From the command. No flowers, no card, nothing. And I bring this up to you because the thousands of families we talked to over the years, they all have different story than us.
Yeah.
And they went to the memorial service. As a matter of fact, turns this out, get this. The Navy pays for the parents to go to the memorial service. And we were never offered. And that was the casualty assistance officers testified to that. That is one of the reasons why Whitmer and the Commodore are gone, meaning they were E7s, trust me. They were believable. They had credibility and nothing to gain but tell the truth. And they did. And
when he says nobody showed up, the guy that escorted Brandon home, he was a lieutenant for an enlisted person.
Unheard of, just so you know this. That a lieutenant would escort the body. And I got into it with him, asking him, what's the status on these people and all this? And he said, oh, there's an investigation. And he blew me off. But what happened is he went to the funeral home that night. If you read Brandon's letters, this backs it up. Brandon, in his letter, states he did not want a military funeral. He did not want to be buried in his uniform. States it in his letter. So
nothing in the military to be proud of.
That's what he said. So I was honoring what he said. And as soon as he arrived at the funeral home, the funeral director changed him out of his uniform. This lieutenant wanted to inspect his uniform, which is corny to begin with, trust me. And because they looked at it before they took him off the plane. We witnessed this when he arrived. And so he got all mad and he left that night, the funeral home.
Went back to Norfolk.
Apparently he went back to Norfolk. Here's what happened. 2 days later, it was Brandon's funeral. The captain of the honor guard, we overrode Brandon on the honors. I had that. He deserved honors. And so the captain was looking for this lieutenant, and I didn't know where he was. She asked me, and she was furious. I didn't know. Turns out that, and I didn't know this part, so you know this, and actually knowing this, finding this out sucked, but apparently when a parent had served in the military, they give the spouse a flag, surviving mom in this case, and the husband gets a flag if he served. So I was a veteran, I served, I was a retiree. So this guy was supposed to present the flag to me, so they had nobody to present the flag to me. Ironically, one of Brandon's friends was at the funeral from here in Phoenix, and she was in uniform, so she presented it to me. But that guy left and went back to Norfolk, and here's what we suspect happened. It took 14 days to get Brandon's body from Norfolk to here. You get people from the war zone who died in the war zone faster than that. There was shenanigans going on with Brandon's autopsy and everything. We have no idea. We do know the FBI intervened. We have no idea why. It's in the report, so you know that. And so we read it. And that guy was more worried about that lieutenant he was sent because they couldn't entrust it enlisted, because they might talk to us and they didn't want anybody talking to us. So they sent a lieutenant, and his job was to guard that body. And when the funeral director changed him, she was scared that the funeral director saw something she shouldn't have. We figured this out well after the fact, unfortunately. And so she didn't notice anything. It's obvious. She would have told us. So obviously he was safe. He went back to Norfolk. But the guy would disrespect me, this lieutenant. And what gets funny is he's named in the article, and I'll tell you his name. It's Baber, and Sky is his call sign.
Sky Baber.
And his dad had audacity to call us up and wanting the article, his name retracted because it was going to ruin his career. Really? I mean, come on. Our son's dead, and you're worried about this guy's career, and he can't even conduct himself properly at a funeral. Unbelievable. And you're worried about that.
At a homecoming. He wasn't at the funeral.
Right. And so he, whatever. But anyway, that's the kind of people in that command. It was obviously all they cared about was themselves. They cared about their rank, and they didn't care about the people. And the other quick thing I want to point out to you, the day before, there's 13 Helo squadrons in Norfolk, Virginia. The day before Brandon died, There was a suicide in a sister squadron. There was no stand down, wasn't talking about nothing. Had there been, Brandon wouldn't have been able to die the way he did. A week before that, there was another suicide in a sister squadron. No stand down, not talked about. Before that one, there was another suicide in the sister squadron. No stand down, nothing. And then a week before that, ironically, another one. That Commodore had 4 suicides in 1 month. It did absolutely nothing to prevent further suicides. And one of those was a pilot and an officer. That was the one the day before Brandon. And these suicides were confirmed by the casualty assistance headquarters, because they had to continue to call me because they were having problems with the command. And not that that would surprise you guys one bit. They physically had to call the command. They didn't do anything. They didn't fill out the paperwork, nothing. And they were on these people for weeks. And finally they said, oh, it was in our spam file. I can't believe someone would say that to the Millington, Tennessee. That's where the Navy headquarters is. But casualty assistance coordinator confirmed the suicides. Just so you know, this is based by fact. Anyway, that was the record for 1 month until the Bush and the Washington broke that. I think they had 5 or 6 in a month, but that was the record at that time. And but had there been safety stand down and seriousness about these suicides, it could have prevented further suicides. The other thing is, we were told what few witnesses came forward. Many of them said Brandon's told the command he was depressed, he needs help. They told him to suck it up, get back to work. That sparked us to do the Brandon Act, which you wanted to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say, but I'll try to keep it short and concise. I'm horrified by the whole thing. This is not the first time I've heard it, but needless to say, that's not the way that things are supposed to go. As somebody who's actually been a casualty notification officer and who has tragically had to also hold memorials for parents who lost their child through suicide and then through accident. Really having the parents there is supposed to be the cementing point of having a memorial, where you're supposed to bring in the military families and with their families, and then try to kind of cement them together. So I horrified and just deeply saddened by the whole thing. So about the Brandon Act, can you maybe explain, like, what is in there and how it came about and what is it supposed to do, and some of the issues that you've seen so far with its implementation?
I'll start that. The Brandon Act came about because we were not going to let any parents go through what we went through anymore. We come to find out, I did not know this. I will openly tell you, 22 years active duty. I was a Navy counselor. I was fleet and a recruiting counselor. And I had no idea so many people were dying by suicide. And it really is since the year 2000. I mean, there was many before that. Don't get me wrong. I was pointing out, when it really started skyrocketing is the year 2000. I was still on active duty for another 7 years, so I had no idea. And no one ever died in any command I was in. Again, I'm not saying it wasn't because of me. I'm just pointing out it's
Sure.
they're not supposed to happen. And so we said this ain't going to happen, so we're going to do something. So we wrote the Brandon Act. And the original Brandon Act, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of accountability in it. Unfortunately, Congress, they told us word for word, we'll go with this if you want, because it's important, but they said it would take 5 to 7 years to pass if we held the accountability, if it had to be in there. If we took it out, they said we can get it passed right away. So in the name of saving lives, we decided we'll get it passed. They also told us we'll amend it later, and they said amending it is simple compared to getting it passed. So we could get our accountability in it someday, and that has been the plan all along, just so everybody knows that. We didn't abandon it. It's just that when you're losing 700, 800, 900 people a year, you can't afford to wait 5 to 7 years. Come on, we couldn't do that. So in the name of saving lives, and we did that. And then if you read Brandon's letter, we interpret Brandon's letter. Remember, the middle of the letter is missing. The command stole it. We have no idea what it says, but we assure you there was evidence in there. We know Brandon. And on his phone, there would have been a video or a computer or both a goodbye video and stuff. None of that existed because they erased it all because it implicated them. And so interpreting his letter, it's his legacy. He wanted rules changed. He wanted to save lives. One of the things he wanted done was the SEAL thing. If you don't make it through SEALs, we went to the Secretary of Navy, Del Toro, directly several times, and we got it changed that if you don't make it through SEALs, you get to pick the job you'd like to do as long as you're qualified. You have to be qualified, which all of them almost are because their scores are outrageous. Trust me,
Sure.
to be a SEAL, your score is very high. You qualify for everything, but probably the nuclear program. And so the that we got that changed. The other thing he wanted that badly. So that's his legacy, and saving lives we interpret it as his legacy. There's many people that have come forward that Brandon helped them that were having problems and depressed and things like that and wanted to take their own lives, that he actually talked them out of it. So we felt his legacy. We literally, without exaggerating to you, we made some appointments. Teri did. She made appointments for Capitol Hill. We bought a brand new car, hopped in the car, drove to DC, and every day we went to Capitol Hill for a couple of weeks, office to office, and made our appointments. And ironically, the first office we went to was Congressman Moulton in Massachusetts. He embraced us, heard the story, wanted to help immediately. He wanted to sponsor it. He told us, we know you're going to be here a while. You don't have to say yes. We're like, yeah, we want you to sponsor it. We'll get other sponsors, but we'll take you to be the lead. And his background, obviously, he's a veteran himself, and
Right.
and he suffered from exact things Brandon did, so he understood. So the DC trip was successful. Unfortunately, COVID, set us back. It was introduced. It was gonna pass, and it didn't. Unfortunately, the Senate side, it passed the House and not the Senate. So we went back again, and it got reintroduced, and we fought hard the second time. And the second time, it passed both the House and Senate. Senator Kelly was the lead on the Senate side, and it passed. And then once it passed, unfortunately, as much as we would have liked to celebrate, that's the least of your problems. Then DOD needs to implement it and sign it, and that took a year. And but they did, and they made a lot of promises to us, of course. And so the Brand Act got implemented. Truly, it passed 27 December 2021. It was truly signed by DOD May
5th,
23.
23.
And so it became the law of the land. They took care of implementation, of course, and we Capitol Hill, quickly, I will tell you this. After I retired, I went to Arizona State University. I got a degree in communication and a degree in political science. I thought I had this built thing down. Let me tell you, they don't prepare you for for Capitol Hill. Oh man, that
I
place,
bet.
that thing will eat you alive over there. And it was setback after setback, promise after promise. And don't get me wrong, it's not the people that sponsored it, it's the others.
Sure.
If I just felt if I was rich and had a blank checks I issued, I probably could have gotten anything I wanted. But unfortunately, we didn't fit that category. We had to actually work and convince people to help us, and it was not easy and very political. A lot of people, like I said, were going to help, and then they didn't. And the worst one was our senator here, Senator Sinema. We went to them first. They promised us everything and then turned around and turned their back on us. Not only
I'm
turned
so
their
sorry to
back
hear
on
about
us,
that.
like get a bill passed with an app with being the Brandon Act, trying to take credit for our stuff. I mean, her and her staff were a piece of work. Let me tell you, very disappointing. I actually found out afterwards that she taught at ASU. I did not know that. I never took a class she taught, but I was embarrassed after that. I loved ASU too. I think it's the greatest school in the world, but knowing she teaches there was another, like, I can't believe this. But anyway.
Well, I want to
Go ahead.
with the Brandon Act, I saw in an article that Teri wrote after action report, and we'll put it in the show notes, that the implementation, throughout the different echelons hasn't been all all that well? Is that basically it's been kind of haphazard or ignored, or yeah? And that's the thing about the DoD is that you can put weight on certain things, you can not put weight on certain things. Commanders have a lot of discretion, as they say, and so is that basically what you have found, is that it hasn't been a perfect implementation throughout the forces?
Yes.
Yes, so much so we had to go to DC in March, and we hit 22 offices in 3 days
Yeah.
and told them what was going on. And one of them, and they were not too happy at all. Congress is pretty upset. And they lost some people. We lost our contacts, excuse me,
Mhm.
at the Pentagon. They all obviously, the whole staff has changed. But Capitol Hill is not too happy. And the numbers, just so everyone knows, the numbers go up every year. They break last year's record every year
The
since
suicide.
since
Suicides, yeah.
2000. And the Brandon Act can't work. We can't use data. We don't have anything to use if it's not implemented. Only 10% of the 1.5 million know about it. They promised us posters in the workplace, billboards, proper training on it, actual training too, not just go on the computer. And
Yeah.
Flyers and pocket cards and
and they promised to do it how it was designed. See, a lot of people, they tie it to mental health. That's fine. Okay, we're okay with that part. But the Brandon Act, what it does is it empowers you to use it for anything. So if you were sexually assaulted, harassed, if you have an alcohol or drug problem, you can invoke the Brandon Act.
Right.
Anything. And so they're not putting it out properly. They're acting like it's just mental health.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. So we went to Capitol Hill, and they know about it, and they're taking it for action, of course. And we're certain the Pentagon will be once all these secretaries are sworn in and picked. And we do want to sit down with the Secretary of Defense. We never got to get to see Austin. That was a disappointment. But this new one we want to meet with and go over it with them. And then they started actually asking the question when they're sworn in, if they know, or excuse me, when they're going through a confirmation about the Brandon Act, asking the prospective secretaries to see what they say, if they know about it or not. So it made it kind of tricking them.
Well, I just want to, thank you both for taking the time out of your schedule and to share your son's story, a tragic one. But although that the Brandon Act hasn't been completely properly implemented, it has saved lives, and I think that is your son's legacy. And I'll turn it over to you if you want to make some final thoughts before we wrap up.
The Brandon Act, for those service members who know about it, due to their mostly moms research military mental health, because obviously they see their child deteriorate, they contact me and I tell them to invoke the Brandon Act. And I can tell you that the Brandon Act has helped so many service members get the help that they need.
Yep.
So that is a positive. And the Brandon Act, and it shows that if they know it exists, it works.
Yeah.
It helps them.
Sure.
It saves them. And that's what we want. That's what is needed. I also want to say that we created the Brandon Caserta Foundation,
Okay.
which will help us help our service members and honor the ones that we have lost.
Yep.
Our mission, obviously, is 0 suicides.
Yeah.
And what our vision is we want to be able to fly the parents whose service member is in crisis or needs their support. We would like to be able to fly them or help them fly to their service members so they have their support system.
Yeah.
obviously, we've only flown one family so far, but we don't get a whole lot of donations in order to do that.
Well, you send us the website or any way for people to get donations, and I'll make sure to put it on our show notes. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
Um,
Sir, do you have any final thoughts?
That this is a problem that everyone needs to tackle. History shows that people fix problems over time. You can't expect the military to fix this. Trust me. You need people to intervene and be out there. This is going to take a huge coalition to get this done, and it's not easy. It's not a subject anybody wants to talk about. I understand that, and we probably wouldn't be here if we didn't lose our son. But I do want to point out, over 2 a day die by suicide, military. 22 veterans or more a day die by suicide. And then you'll never get it. No one will ever release it. You could just use your imagination how many attempts there are a day, unfortunately. And that's just military and military community numbers. This is a nationwide crisis, but I submit to you this. They train us from day one. Mission comes first. You can't do the mission without the people. We're losing these people. The command readinesses are not where they say they are, in particular because of the toxic commands. These things are problematic, and they lead to, can you imagine, just off your opinion, hearing this with Brandon, can you imagine Brandon's command going to war? They would cost other commands their lives, let's face it. So my point is, this is everybody's problem, whether we like it or not. It's national security problem here, and we all need to be involved. But so many of you have helped over the years, don't get me wrong, and come forward. We appreciate that. But it's a together thing. And you don't want to lose your son or daughter and then get involved. You need to get involved now, because I'll leave you with this thought. These people in these toxic commands, they retire and they get out. So your son or daughter who will never join the military, you tell me, they could go to work at Google, and their supervisor could be one of the people that killed Brandon. Like it or not, it could be. And you could have people telling you, police will come in that case, telling your son or daughter's died. How would you feel knowing that it was one of the 13 that killed our son, or the thousands that killed others? So please keep that in the back of your mind. We're here for you guys, and we appreciate everything you do. And
I appreciate your time and sharing your story. I will say that, being in the military is hard enough. It is not an easy life for many reasons. You're constantly on the move. Your life is in the hands of other people, and you're often inserted into places where you've never been before. Sometimes where you're living is good, sometimes it's not. Depends on the base, depends on the commander and the type of environment. And what you've heard here, I think, is probably the worst story I've ever heard in my life, of a commander being a toxic and absolutely abhorrent leader, and actually setting a climate that perpetuated lying so much that they dishonored the legacy of a sailor, a seaman, and didn't really treat the family right. As someone who has been to a lot of military family funerals, I am sorry, and I apologize on behalf of the DoD for the way that they treated you. This is not the way that we treat parents, because, ladies and gentlemen, military families, Mr. and Mrs. Caserta here, they lend us their treasure so that we can go and fight our nation's wars. And the only thing that they always ask for is that they're honored in return. And this is the type of treatment that reverberates through military families. And it's one of the reasons why you've had a 22% rise in military families who do not recommend military service. 33% in 2016. It's 55% now. And it's going to go up. So the best thing that we can do is to continue to talk about the Brandon Act and talking about toxic leadership. And it's why it's incredibly important that we pick the right people to be put in those positions, because it's a dictatorial-like powers. Believe me, I know. Yeah. And if you are not humble enough, you can be a monster. So thank you so much to both of you for coming on here and sharing your story and sharing Brandon's legacy. And this is GCV6. And until next time, I'm out.